favorite co-host, Mr. Paul Ramsey. Hey,
I
Paul
hope I'm
Ramsey.
favorite.
You
That'd
are
be
my
so nice if
favorite.
I was favorite. Favorite
And
co-host. You could be the favorite host, and I'll be the favorite co-host. And then today, people can make a new favorite because my buddy Brian Miller is here, and I love him, and I love talking with him, and he's awesome. And you guys have so much. Brian is so smart and talented. He started out working professionally as a magician, and we used to co-gig sometimes at colleges all over the United States. And then Brian was like, yeah, I'm kind of like smart and always wanting to grow. And so he started doing other things, including a TEDx talk that went totally viral, got watched over 3 million times. Then he's like, a little more maybe. So he published a book, and that did very well. And then he's like, maybe just start speaking. And so now, so then he got on the speaking circuit, which was awesome until COVID-19 happened and no one's booking speakers right now. So we're going to talk with Brian about how all of that intersects for him in a way that I think you'll really, really find interesting. Brian, how are you?
Oh man, Paul, I am so good. It's good to see you. I miss seeing you. I miss that. Do you remember that one gig we did together at a college in a dirty little room that hadn't been swept in like 40 years, and with like 9 students, and half of them had to volunteer for you? It was wild.
I do
Miss
remember
all of
that, and we
that.
won't mention that school's name because they're a pretty prestigious school. So we'll just
They,
leave that.
I had forgotten who it was until you just said that, and now
Yeah.
I remember.
So you you really, everything I said is absolutely true for our audience to understand. Like, I mean, you went to a place where you were doing quite well, just doing magic.
Mhm.
And then you actually, though, did even better when you went into this new area of growth. Tell us about what it was like when all of that sort of came to a halt.
So recount the war that was 3 weeks ago. Yeah, it was wild. I mean, I enjoyed being a professional magician for about 10 years. Did it from high school through college, and then for a while into, kind of the, mid to late 20s. And yeah, I did well. I was touring nationally, a little bit of internationally, and then I transitioned into speaking with the success of the TEDx talk, and then for the last 5 years have been able to travel the world as an international keynote speaker, which has been just bananas. I mean, I've been on the same stages as mostly it's like PhDs and people with 40 years of research and all this stuff, and they're like, and Brian, and it feels weird. Like you're up there kind of in, you're like, I just used to be a magician. I don't know why I'm here, but it's been really exciting to, go into that quote thought leadership. And we desperately need a new term for what people like me do. Cause when people ask me, what do you do? I can't go, well, I'm a thought leader, because that's ridiculous. But yeah, it's been really exciting. And then just about a month ago, I watched that entire career I'd built for 15 years crumble in the span of about 24 hours. It was truly surreal. So here's what was, I mean, apart from all of the expletives that are going on out loud and in your head while that's happening, my wife is pregnant with our first. We got a baby on the way, and like,
Right.
and I'm, it was a lot to take in. I was mourning. I felt like for a minute I was mourning the death of my career, and how am I going to support my family and all these things. And I was on track to do the best year of my career by far. I was booked through next February,
Wow.
and it just ended overnight. But the gig economy has not collapsed, which is, I know, the title of this. In fact, within just a few, I've built a new business out of the remains of what was there, out of what I had built already. I've got a whole new business that would have taken me years to build in times past that I was able to build in 3 weeks, and I'm off to the races. I'm getting booked. I've been doing at least a gig a week. I'm speaking. I'm working. It's going okay.
So you've just transformed the nature of what we tend to think of as a gig.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not that there's no work. It's just that the work is in a different medium, And I think what happened is what you would predict what happened, which is there's about 90% of the people in every industry that went into fetal position a month ago and are still there.
Right.
And the other 10%, the rest of us, mostly people who are listening right now, are probably in that 10% who at least have had the thought, you know what? This is an opportunity. This is a moment. It's a moment that leveled the playing field. A friend of mine, mentor of mine recently said, no one has 20 years of experience in this new economy. So the people who've been in the game for 20, 30, 40 years, you can compete with them now.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Smart.
I like that. And you know what's really cool about what you're saying right now is that a lot of people are, like I was telling Paul, we are in two different, they're like, it seems like they're two different circles. One of those who are like, oh my God, this is a fantastic opportunity. The playing field has been leveled and now I can take advantage of everything that's coming up. I have more experience with online. I have, you know, things that I wanted to do that I haven't done because offline things took precedent. And like you're saying, there's a completely different side of people who going like, where's my stimulus check? You know, what about my rights to work? You know, what am I doing stuck at home and what am I gonna deal with that? So, and I'm talking to people who have brick and mortar businesses as well as, you know, speaking gigs and businesses like that. And it's very interesting to see those who pivot and change and those who are like frozen in the, you know, in the headlights. So what was that moment for you where you were like, fudge, you know, everything is collapsing, but I am going to pivot and make it better?
It took less than 36 hours, honestly.
Really? That's amazing.
I did it almost immediately. So I had a whole day, the day that the dominoes started coming down, right? I had that day where I was just like everybody else in the world. Because it wasn't just my work is collapsing, it was everything is collapsing. I mean, it was starting to dawn on me what was about to happen and how long it was going to go, right? I was pretty quick, and Paul and I are connected on Facebook. And Paul, you saw me, I was one of the first people anywhere on my Facebook feed that was posting about how long this is going to be and how deep it's going to go, right?
Yeah.
And I was trying to tell people right away. They're like, okay, it'll be a few weeks or maybe next month and then the gigs will come back. I'm like, no, guys, that's not what's happening right now. I mean, I had a gig canceled to COVID-19 in January. So I've known about this for months. You know, I don't know what happened to the government, but I knew about it since January. I had a gig canceled from it. So I took a day to kind of, like I said, to mourn, and I'm using that word specifically because I feel like what we all had to do personally and professionally is kind of mourn the imagined future, right? The year we thought we were gonna have. For me, like my wife she's not gonna get to have a baby shower. She can't go shopping for baby stuff with her mom. Like we had to tell people. We knew she was pregnant, you know, months ago, but we hadn't told anybody yet. And we were just about to. And so we had to tell people over a Zoom call that she was pregnant, you know, with our first, you know, that's not stuff you intend. Now I'm not, right? I want to be clear. There's people going through genuine tragedy right now. And I think that goes without saying, right? We're talking about other types of problems in this call. And occasionally when you talk about like, oh no, my business, or I can't go shopping for baby clothes, people are going to go, hey, you don't have a right to complain about that. Some people can't afford food. And you're like, no, you're right. Some people can't afford food, but we can only talk about the problems that we are having, and people are they're allowed to have they're allowed to be upset that they don't get to do the things they expected to be able to do.
Yes.
So I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah. Brian, it makes me think of, I always come back in these kinds of conversations, the single biggest takeaway of many from Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, in which, you know, people were always asking him, what was it like to survive the concentration camp and to watch all the people you knew and loved die? And one of the things that he says in that book, which was so big for me, is he goes, look, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but he says, look, human beings always want to measure suffering like it's a solid, like you throw it on the scale and see whose weighs more. And he said, I really think that suffering is like a gas, and that every person is the container for that gas. And when you put a gas into a container, it's going to expand and fill that container completely every time. And so that's the human experience, right? Is like our suffering is different, but you know, for us, it fills our container completely. And I feel like that's what you're really getting at, is that should be acknowledged for everyone, right?
Yeah, exactly. You can only deal with the problems you have. And that doesn't mean you're saying other people don't have other problems, you know? So So I'm relatively fortunate, right? I've had a successful career enough that, I mean, for my wife, she's a therapist. She was able to start doing telehealth therapy from home, which is wild, a world you never could have imagined. I mean, she has kids are her clients, 4, 5, 6-year-olds. She's doing video conferencing therapy with like 4-year-olds, but suddenly we're here, right? But she's safe at home. I'm safe at home. We're not going to lose the house because I've been relatively successful from years building a business. So there's a lot of luck and fortune that I've had. Okay, but within that, there's a lot of people just as lucky as me who are crumbling right now because they're not taking advantage of the opportunity that's in front of us. And that's, I think, what this conversation we're having is about, is that opportunity. So Ifat, to your earlier question, it took about just one day for me to go, okay, I'm going to be really sad for a day about what I thought was coming this year. And then on day 2, I messaged one of my VIP clients, somebody who hired 8 times in 4 years already. And I said, listen, in the next few weeks, your organization is going to crumble. Said, that's what's coming, right? This was like 24 hours in. Said, in the next few weeks, your organization is going to crumble. When that happens, I can help. Reach out. He didn't even respond. 10 days later, I got an email from him. He said, hey, it's happening. What can you help us with? And I said, here's what I can do. And I pitched him a program. He booked it. A week later, we did it. He gave me a testimonial. Everybody did a survey. I used that to build the first version of a new website, and we were off to the races.
This is fantastic. It's fantastic for many reasons. But before I get into that, Michael Mason is here. Hey, Michael. Guys, if you want to join the conversation, just viralconnectivity.com/live. Hop on in right below this video. There's a link. You can come in and you can share with us anything that you're going through right now. And if you need any help, advice, how to pivot, you have 3 brains here that you can pick together. So what's fantastic about that is that, you were taking action. You're like, okay, something is happening. Let me mourn it. And then what am I going to do about that? And then you're not just waiting there, sitting, going like, okay, clients are going to find me. I'm going to just put more content online. I'm just going to be more visible. You were actively going out and pursuing clients and saying, hey, I'm here to help. What can I help you with? And then he just came back and said, this is what I need help with. Or did you have a plan or something that you suggested?
Yeah, so it was kind of a combination of the two. Before I even reached out to him, in my mind, I had 3 different topics, 3 different things that I thought, given who he was, his team, his organization, what they might need help with. And the first thought I had was, your team's about to start working from home for the first time ever, and you're going to need communication. I mean, I'm a human connection specialist. That's what I do. So here's the process I've been talking through, because I'm doing a lot of coaching and consulting lately, and this is the process I'm talking everybody through. Is the wrong way to approach the pivot is, how do I take what I've always done and shove it into the virtual world, right? That is what most people are doing. And Paul, you and I have seen a lot of bad live stream magic shows lately. And that's because most magicians are shoving a camera 10 feet away from them, standing up and doing their magic show the way they always did it. And that is the wrong approach. The right approach is, how do you take, virtual world. So think about what that world is. What are the tools and technologies that exist in this world? Okay, now we're going to take a step back and go, what plays well? What does the tools and technology of the virtual world, what is the best fit? What really takes advantage of the power of this medium in a way that we used to take advantage of a live stage or a live environment or whatever your business is? Okay, now one step back, what fits within what I already do, my expertise, the way that people trust me, right? Whatever my business is, what do I do that can take advantage of the best stuff from the virtual world that fits into the virtual world naturally? So the first thing I did was I scrapped my keynote. I've been a keynoter for almost 5 years, giving some version of the same speech all over the world, killing it. Yeah. Nothing about that keynote makes sense in the virtual world. Me giving a keynote speech, an inspirational, go get 'em 45 minutes, I can record that once and let people watch it on YouTube. That doesn't make sense here.
Hallelujah. So Wait, I have to say that. Like, hallelujah, thank you for saying that, right? Because there is no difference between a YouTube recorded video and a live stream than, if you're not actually interacting with people, right? Otherwise, You're right. It's exactly the same thing. Why even bother with the live technology and stuff?
Right. It's just my TEDx talk. And the reason that people used to bring me in live to speak to their group, even though my TEDx existed, is because it was live.
Right.
That me being in the physical space was the point, right? And now that that's gone, it doesn't make sense anymore. So I had to work backwards and go, what can I offer that I have expertise in, that my clients and prospects and customers trust me to deliver, that makes the best use of this medium? And that's the journey you have to go down to figure out how to pivot right now.
And what did you find? What did you find for yourself?
Well, so right away, I mean, I got a bunch of programs I rolled out, but right away, the first thing that I've been getting booked a ton with is I'm doing virtual workshops. So I used to do half-day workshops and communication training for kind of team building, interdepartmental communication, how to have marketing and sales conversations, and tell a story that that translates and connects with people on a deep emotional level. I'm now doing virtual workshops with people where I can get up to 100 people or more in real time, use virtual breakout rooms and all this cool technology I knew about that a lot of people don't know about, and have them work out real exercises. So I get to do my TED-like stories and be funny and do a little bit of live magic and do the interactive thing. But that's not mainly what you're paying for when you bring in my program. I'm doing that as a facilitator now instead of as a keynote speaker, and then letting them work out the practical exercises, bringing them back and talking about it. So a workshop made way more sense than a speech for me.
And it's fascinating because, I've been talking forever, and Paul knows that, about the magic in live streaming is the real time engagement, right? The real time interaction. And a lot of people don't know how to get people interacting together on live streams, or even in the virtual, not even streaming it, right? Like on Zoom and stuff like that. So you're right. This is a completely new skill that we are going to need during COVID and after COVID, right? I don't think life is going to go back to exactly the way it was before. Yeah.
No chance. No chance. I keep seeing that. I think it's blind hope or optimism or just yearning for the way things were. I don't know what it is, but there's a lot going on, right? And this is a lot to take in all at
Yeah.
once. Nobody was prepared for this. Nobody's emotionally built to handle what just happened. And I know I'm coming across as like I got this under control, but I'm having my moments on a daily basis too, where I'm just like, what is going on, right?
Yeah.
We're all having those, but in between those moments, let's act as if, right? So one of the first things I said to my management the first week of this all is I basically said, listen, guys, I'm acting as if I'm not going to be able to step on a live stage until 2022.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
hopefully that's not true, but I'm acting as if that's true. That's my plan of action right now.
2022.
Like I said, I don't know if that's true, but depending on I'm not a scientist, depending on who you listen to, it could be, 18 months until there's a vaccine. And maybe that's the first. I think some aspects of normal life, restaurants at half capacity, a little bit of shopping, but hundreds or thousands of people shoulder to shoulder in a conference room, like where I used to make a living, that's not coming back. I see restaurant magicians, old friends of mine in magic that are talking about when restaurant magic's going to come back. I'm like, restaurant magic's not coming back, guys. It's
Yeah.
not coming back. No restaurant owner is going to take on the liability of having an outsider who doesn't actually work for the restaurant at the tables, handing out props and getting them back around people with food with a deadly virus on the loose. There's no chance of that. No
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. And so we're talking about the collapse of the gig economy. We're talking about it in different ways, right? So the way that the gig economy used to work is not going to work anymore. But there are
Right.
new ways that, people can figure out how to deliver their skills in this medium. One of the things that Paul mentioned at the beginning was that you were able to bounce back very quickly because of the connections and the relationships that you had. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So that's, of course, this is a kind of a meta conversation I end up having with people because I've built a relatively successful business doing the thing that I actually now teach people how to do, right? And that feels weirdly meta because I've become like a human connection specialist or whatever. But the thing is, I built my career as a magician doing these things, and after 10 years of that, I transitioned into teaching these things now to people in every industry. You cannot believe the industries that I've keynoted in, that I've done workshops for, consulted for. Like the statewide correctional association brought me in to keynote their annual conference once. I couldn't have less in common as like a touchy-feely, like former magician talking about empathy with a room full of correctional officers at 8 o'clock in the morning. It went great. It went great. Because human connection is universal. So yeah, the thing is, if you have not built meaningful connections with a group of people, with an audience, with clients, customers, prospects, if you haven't before COVID-19, I don't want to say it's too late, but you got a lot of catching up to do, right? Is that the time to build real connections was 5 years ago, right? For a pandemic.
Yeah.
But that's true of every business. The time to do this, like, here, I'm going to quote my mentor, Seth Godin, on this, because he says things better than anybody. The best time to do this was 5 years ago, but the second best time is today. So
yeah, nice. Well, and I think that's, you go back to the first story that you told us about pivoting, Brian. You didn't tell us about, so I got really good, I cracked down on figuring out Google AdWords and how to do the appropriate Facebook buys and run all the like, you didn't talk about reaching out to people cold, right? You went right to the people that you knew would understand you, that you had rapport with, and you leverage that in the most appropriate way, in the best way possible. And I think, again, I think people tend to overlook that, right? Is they start thinking about, how do I find more people? How do I find more leads? How do I find, you're like, they're there, you're just thinking of them as different people than the way, like you're thinking about who you need now.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And I mean, yeah, of course, now that we're a month into, I'm starting to go, okay, now that I've got some assets built up, some websites, some stuff, now we're starting to go, how do we put this out into the new people that have never heard of me before and go down the marketing route? But that was way after. I needed to build I needed proof of concept first. And proof of concept, the people, like 3 of the first 4 events that I booked, workshops that I booked immediately, were from who booked me at least 3 times in the past couple of years. Immediately, I reached out to people, and and I had conversations with people who know me and love me and trust me, but said, not ready for that right now. I said, no problem. I just wanted you to know that it's here. But a couple of people, they know me, they trust me, they like me, right? All that stuff you always hear, that fluffy stuff you always hear. Who do people do business with? People they know, like, and trust. And so it wasn't 10 minutes in some of these conversations. I said, how's things going? And they went, ugh, and they just exploded. And after 10 minutes, I said, listen, I think I can help you. Would you like my help? And they're like, can you do for us? And I said, well, here are some things I can do for you. And I pitched 2 or 3 different options, and each one of them said, yes, let me just get approval from the board or whoever. But it wasn't a hard, they've booked me before, they know me. So you have to, leverage, and I know leverage is a weird term for people, but like, leverage your relationships. And I don't mean personal relationships. You should have relationships with your clients and customers. Like, they should think of you as a friend. And what you have, the biggest issue, and I know you both know this, and you've probably talked about this a lot, but it's a mindset block. People have this mindset block. They think that being generous only means giving stuff away for free, and that is not true, right? I showed up for one of my clients on day 1 of this whole thing generously, right? Because they paid for the program. It doesn't mean I wasn't being generous, because if I hadn't reached out and said, I can help you right now, that act is generous. If you can genuinely help somebody, you have something actually of value that they can really use, then if the most selfish thing you can do is not tell them about it.
It's true. Michael Mason is saying it'll be interesting for entertainers here and thereafter, and whether the restaurants and the bars will reopen, will hire folks. And it's not just bars and restaurants, Michael. I think, gyms, like my Krav Maga gym. I don't know if I'm going to go and fight and sweat with people anytime soon, even if they open, right? So, or, like all the kids' playgrounds, like all the, saliva and yeah.
I've been talking to a lot of, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of educators, because I do a lot of work in the education market, talking to administrators and teachers and stuff. And I've talked to a lot of teachers lately, and there are a lot of different opinions on what's it going to look like when public school does come back? Because it may not come back in 2020. There's still people talking about when we go back to school in September. I'm like, I don't know, guys. I don't know. But let's say it comes back at some point. What's it going to look like? Are we really going to just go back to 5 days a week, 8 hours a day of shoving 30 kids in a room together? Because that doesn't seem safe. And apparently it's not necessary. And that's the big point, is that every industry right now is discovering that the rules for the last 150 years, we don't need them. They're outdated, they're antiquated, right?
Yes.
Apparently we don't need 45 in-person meetings wasting our time all week, every week. We can be just as effective and efficient sitting at home. And I don't think, organizations are going to want to go back to paying for all the overhead that they used to pay to have everybody on all these satellite offices and stuff, that they electricity usage and all that. And I don't think workers are going to be willing to go back into the office, into the grind every day, when they realize for the last year we got our work done from home. So
right? I started talking about that when we started this show like 3 weeks ago. That was one of the first things we talked about, is like, when businesses, part of their model is they need to find ways to cut costs. Like, after this experience, why wouldn't a huge chunk of them not go, isn't that interesting? We just ran our business for 3 months without having an office that we're paying a lease for. Why should we continue doing that again? Like, it's just going to become clear to people in a way that they never thought was really probably possible before.
And I've said the same thing to my wife. She hears me talk about this stuff all the time, but occasionally she kind of like leans in and goes, all right, I hear how you talk when you're on live streams and on guests on podcasts, but really, what do you think? And she said, but really, you don't think therapy, like that industry, like is going to stay like this? And I'm like, I kind of do. I think what's going to happen in that industry, say, is maybe one day a week you'll have a block of time where you see like high risk, clients for particular reasons that just has to be in person, because there's some things have to be in person. I was chatting with an attorney friend of mine before we got on this, and he was saying, most of his work he's been able to keep doing, even though the courts are closed, but some of the cases he can't resolve, not because they need the courts to do it for them, but because people being in the room together realize the seriousness of the situation and come to a resolution simply because they're in the same room. So that was interesting. That hadn't occurred to me. So we will need something, but maybe one day a week gets reserved, and then each different therapist from that office gets a different day a week, so nobody's ever in together, so then I don't have to worry about spreading something. And the rest of the time we do it telehealth. This is we are living through like an industrial revolution, monumental shift in human history right now. It's people are not taking really appreciating how big this is, I don't think.
Yeah. So listen, Brian, we're out of time, and so we're gonna wrap things up. But I think if we were going for an hour, I would segue right now from what you said into the other thing that you and I have talked before, which is this loneliness epidemic, and what are the implications for all this stuff contributing or potentially helping us see things differently in a way that we can do some good things for people around that. So how about you come back sometime in the future and we hit that one pretty squarely in the nose?
Absolutely. I'd be thrilled to come talk about that. It's a big problem right now. I mean, loneliness was at record unprecedented levels before this started.
Yep. Yeah, it was. Yeah. It
Awesome.
was killing more than everything combined, right? Heart attacks. And
It really, the studies on loneliness, we'll talk about this next time. They are so shocking. People, when in my talks, in my keynotes, when I used to like some of the statistics about this stuff, you have no idea how bad it is. Yeah,
it's really bad. So I'm glad that you're going to be joining us again, because this is fantastic and fascinating. So thank you for joining us today. And I love the way that you are, kind of like putting reality out there, right? Like this is a new kind of industrial revolution that is happening. And I agree with you. I don't think people are realizing how big this is. And that we're not going to go back to normal, and it's fine because we don't have to. We don't have to work 40 hours a day. It's totally fine. So thank you so much, and Paul, thanks for bringing such an amazing guest to our show.
It was a no-brainer. Every time I talk with Brian, I feel like I grow, and I'm happier for having spent time with him. So And that's why we'll make sure we get him back in here again. Hey, if y'all want to learn more about Brian, make sure you head over to www.brianmillerspeaks.com and you can find out more about what he's doing over there. And then, of course, he's on all of the various social platforms.
Hey, thank you so much, both of you, for having me. And I'll throw in just this little thing, which is in the next couple of weeks, I do have just a few slots left in a leadership mastermind that's starting in mid-May. And if you want to get into a group for 3 months of accountability and learn how to solve, all the most pressing problems right in the middle of this, you need to get into this group. We need you. We need you to lead us.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thanks so much.
All right, y'all. That's it for me. Ifat, what do you got?
That's it. We will see you guys tomorrow, 11 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern. That should start being like our, what do you call those when you do these things like the...
Like we're starting a gang or something. Though.
No, like,
That's what I
the
thought.
pounding, the hand signal thingy. Happening. Something. 2, 2, 1, 2. See you later. Bye, guys.